Pay attention to this security camera footage. What you're about to see lasted only 47 seconds, but it would become the most haunting piece of evidence in a murder case that exposed the deadly cost of forbidden love in Dubai. November 12, 2019, 11:18 p.m. The high-definition video shows the master bedroom of a luxury villa in Al Barari, one of Dubai's most exclusive compounds. Cream marble floors gleaming under recessed lighting. Floor-to-ceiling windows with blackout curtains drawn. Modern furniture arranged with precision. And in the right corner of the frame, a massive German-made safe. 6 feet tall, brushed steel, the kind that costs more than most people earn in a year. The camera is positioned at an elevated angle, capturing the entire room in perfect clarity. This is not cheap security. This is the surveillance system of extreme wealth. At 11:18 p.m., 2 figures enter the frame from the left. A man and a woman. The man is Arab, early 50s, wearing a white thob and gutra, traditional Emirati dress. Tall, commanding presence. This is Sheikh Talal bin Al-Muhairi, distant cousin to Dubai's ruling family, real estate mogul worth $470 million. The woman is Southeast Asian, late 20s, petite, wearing a cream blouse and black pencil skirt. Professional attire. Her dark hair is pulled back in a neat bun. This is Katha Santos, 29 years old, a Filipina translator for the Philippine embassy. She's carrying her purse clutched tightly against her side. For the first 8 seconds, they stand facing each other in the center of the room. The body language is tense. She's gesturing with her free hand, emphatic. He stands rigid, arms crossed. You can't hear the audio, the camera records video only, but you can see their mouths moving. An argument. Heated. At second 9, Katha takes a step back. She's shaking her head. No. Whatever he's saying, she's refusing. At second 12, Sheikh Talal moves toward her. Fast. Purposeful. She backs away, still shaking her head, her hand raised as if to ward him off. At second 15, he grabs her arm. She pulls away, stumbles slightly. Her purse falls to the floor. At second 19, the Sheikh lunges forward. He grabs both her arms. She's struggling now, you can see her body twisting, trying to break free. Her mouth is open. She's clearly screaming, though the silent footage makes it surreal, like watching violence through glass. At second 23, he pulls her toward the safe. She plants her feet, resisting, but he's significantly larger, stronger. He drags her. At second 28, they reach the safe. The door is already open, you can see the dark interior, empty except for some shelves. At second 31, he forces her toward the opening. She grabs the safe's door frame, holding on. Her knuckles are white even in the video. At second 34, he pries her hands off, shoves her. She disappears into the safe, falling forward out of frame. At second 37, Sheikh Talal leans into the safe. His arm is extended, you can see him doing something inside but can't see what. He's in there for 3 seconds. At second 40, he steps back, swings the heavy steel door closed. At second 42, he punches a code into the electronic keypad. 8 digits, his fingers move quickly, muscle memory. At second 44, the lock beeps. The display light turns from green to red. Locked. At second 47, Sheikh Talal bends down, picks up Katha's purse from where it fell on the floor. He looks at it for a moment. Then he walks out of frame to the left. The video continues. The room is empty now. Silent. Still. Just expensive furniture and marble floors and that massive steel safe with its red locked light glowing. The camera keeps recording. 1 minute passes. 5 minutes. 10. The safe doesn't move. Nothing moves. At 11:51 p.m., 33 minutes after locking the safe, Sheikh Talal re-enters the frame. He's changed clothes, now wearing casual Western attire, dark pants and a polo shirt. He walks directly to the safe, stops in front of it, stands there for 11 seconds, just staring at the locked door. Then he turns and walks out of frame. He doesn't return. The camera continues recording. Midnight passes. 1 a.m. 2 a.m. The bedroom remains empty. The safe remains locked, its red light glowing. At 6:47 a.m., November 14th, 34 hours and 29 minutes after the safe was locked. Movement. A woman enters the frame from the left. Not Katha. This woman is older, wearing a housemaid's uniform. She's Sri Lankan, carrying cleaning supplies. This is Priya, the villa's housemaid. She moves through the bedroom routinely, straightening already straight furniture. Then she stops. Her head turns toward the safe. She moves closer, bends down near the base of the safe. Her face changes. Confusion, then horror. She drops her supplies, backs away quickly, runs from the room. For minutes later, she returns with Sheikh Talal. He's wearing his white thobe again, freshly pressed. He moves to the safe with deliberate steps, no hesitation, no uncertainty. He knows what he's going to find. He punches the code. 8 digits. The lock beeps. The light turns green. He pulls the heavy door open. The camera angle doesn't show inside the safe's interior, but it shows Sheikh Talal's face. And what you see there is not shock, not surprise, not the face of someone discovering something unexpected. What you see is grim confirmation. He reaches inside. His arms extend, disappear into the safe's dark interior. He pulls. A body emerges. Katha Santos. Limp. Lifeless. Her cream blouse is soaked with sweat, darkened. Her face, turned toward the camera now, is contorted in a frozen expression of terror and agony. Her eyes are open, clouded. Her mouth is open. Her hands are frozen in clawed positions, fingers bent and rigid. Her fingernails are bloody and broken. Sheikh Talal lowers her body to the marble floor with unexpected gentleness, almost tender, as if moving someone sleeping. He stands, looks down at her. 7 seconds pass. Then he pulls out his phone. Within an hour, that bedroom would be flooded with police, paramedics, forensic investigators. Within a week, the world would know Katha Santos' name. Within 4 months, Sheikh Talal would be on trial for murder. And that 47-second video clip, capturing a woman being locked inside a safe to die, would become the most critical evidence in a case that would force Dubai to confront the lethal consequences of unchecked power, forbidden affairs, and the vulnerable position of foreign workers in a city built on their backs. But that footage was only part of the story. The other part was inside Katha's purse, the purse Sheikh Talal picked up off the floor. Inside that purse was Katha's phone. Rose gold iPhone 11. And on that phone was a voice memo, 47 minutes long, recorded starting at 10:38 p.m., November 12th. Katha had hit record before entering the bedroom. She'd documented everything, the argument, the struggle, being forced into the safe, and what came after, every scream, every plea, every prayer. Her slow death, captured in audio as the security camera captured it in silent video. 2 pieces of evidence that, together, would tell the complete story of how a 29-year-old Filipina translator's affair with a married Emirati sheikh ended not with a breakup, but with her being sealed alive inside a locked safe and left to die over 34 hours of unimaginable agony. Katha Santos was not supposed to be in Dubai. She was supposed to be in Quezon City, Philippines, close to her family, building a life in her home country. But life rarely follows the plans we make when we're young and hopeful. Katha was born December 3, 1989, the youngest of 3 children. Her father, Roberto Santos, worked construction. Her mother, Lourdes, cleaned houses for wealthy families in Manila's gated communities. They were poor but not desperately so. They had a small concrete house with a tin roof. The children went to school. There was always rice and vegetables for dinner, even if meat was rare. It was a simple life but stable. That stability shattered when Katha was 16. Roberto fell from scaffolding at a construction site. 3 stories. He died on impact. The construction company paid the family 50,000 pesos, about $1,000, and considered the matter closed. No insurance, no pension, no safety net. Overnight, the Santos family went from poor but managing to drowning. Lourdes took on 3 jobs: cleaning houses during the day, doing laundry at night, selling food at a street stall on weekends. Katha's 2 older brothers, Paulo and Marcus, dropped out of school to work. Paulo was 19, Marcus was 17. They took labor jobs, whatever they could find. Construction, like their father. Delivery driving. Loading trucks at warehouses. The family barely survived. Katha watched all of this. Watched her mother age 10 years in 12 months. Watched her brother's dreams die in warehouses and loading docks. And she made herself a promise. She would be the one to change everything. She would be the one to succeed enough for all of them. She stayed in school. Studied obsessively. Graduated top of her class despite working part-time jobs to pay for books and supplies. She won a scholarship to the University of the Philippines, one of the country's most prestigious institutions. She chose to study Arabic and international relations, a strategic decision. The Middle East was where the money was. Arabic speakers were in high demand. If she could become fluent, if she could become indispensable, she could command the kind of salary that would transform her family's life. For 4 years, Katha lived on 3 hours of sleep a night. She attended classes during the day, worked evening shifts at a call center, studied Arabic until 2 o'clock or 3 a.m. She had no social life, no boyfriends, no time for the experiences most university students take for granted. She was 22 years old and had never been on a date, never been kissed, never been to a party. Every moment was dedicated to the singular goal: succeed enough to save her family. She graduated in 2012, age 22, with highest honors. She spoke 4 languages fluently: Tagalog, English, Arabic, and Spanish. She had job offers from multinational corporations, from government agencies, from NGOs. The salaries were good by Philippine standards: 30,000 to 40,000 pesos a month, about $600 to $800. She turned them all down, because in the Middle East, Arabic translators earned 3 to 4 times that amount. In October 2016, at age 26, Katha arrived in Dubai. Her first contract was with a private translation agency that served corporate clients. The work was exactly what she'd trained for: translating business negotiations, legal documents, corporate correspondence. The pay was 11,000 dirhams a month, about $3,000, triple what she'd earn in Manila. Katha sent 8,000 dirhams home every month. Within 6 months, her brothers were back in university. Paolo studying engineering, Marcus studying accounting. Within a year, her mother retired from 2 of her 3 jobs. The family's concrete house got repairs. A new roof, actual furniture instead of plastic chairs. Katha's sacrifice was working, but success came with a cost Katha hadn't anticipated: loneliness. Dubai is a city of transients. Everyone is there temporarily, working, sending money home, planning to leave someday. Real connections are rare. Katha lived in a shared apartment in Dara with 3 other Filipino women. A nurse, 2 teachers. They were friendly but not friends. Everyone worked different shifts. Everyone was exhausted. On Sundays, Katha attended Mass at St. Mary's Catholic Church, where thousands of Filipinos gathered. She'd sit in the packed pews, surrounded by her countrymen, and feel utterly alone. By early 2019, Katha had been in Dubai for over 2 years. She'd secured a prestigious position at the Philippine Embassy as an Arabic translator. Professionally, she was thriving. Personally, she was withering. The loneliness had evolved into depression. A sense that life was passing her by while she existed in a holding pattern of work and obligation. Then, January 22, 2019, everything changed. The Philippine Embassy hosted a trade delegation meeting. 12 men around a conference table. Katha was assigned as the lead translator. 11 of the 12 men barely acknowledged her existence. The 12th man was different. Sheikh Talal bin Al-Muhari. Age 52. Real estate mogul worth $470 million. Married for 28 years with 4 children. His public image was carefully cultivated. Philanthropist, family man, devout Muslim. His private reality was different. He was known for affairs with foreign women. Teachers, nurses, embassy staff, always foreign women. Never Emirati women. Foreign women were vulnerable, deportable, their word worthless against his in UAE courts. During the meeting, Sheikh Talal tested Katha's Arabic with a complex question. She answered perfectly. After the meeting, he approached her. Professional. Courteous. He asked if she'd be available for private translation work. Confidential business negotiations. Generous pay. Katha said yes. It was work. It was money. 2 weeks later, his office contacted her with the first assignment. The location was not an office. It was the Al-Barari Villa. Villa number 23. Sheikh Talal's assistant explained he conducted sensitive business dealings there, away from his main office where employees might overhear. Katha arrived February 14, 2019. 3 p.m. Al-Barari is one of Dubai's most exclusive communities. Luxury villas starting at $3 million. Villa 23 was extraordinary. 12,000 square feet. Marble everywhere. Museum-quality art. A housemaid, Priya, 34, from Sri Lanka, greeted Katha and led her to a study. Sheikh Talal was waiting with 2 other Emirati businessmen. For 3 hours, Katha translated negotiations for a commercial property deal. She was excellent. When the meeting ended, the other men left. Sheikh Talal handed Katha an envelope. 3,000 dirhams, about $815. For 3 hours. 4 times the standard rate. He asked if she'd be available the following week. She said yes. The second meeting, February 21st, followed the same pattern. The third meeting, February 28th, was different. Sheikh Talal was alone. His partner had cancelled. He insisted on paying Katha the full rate anyway. 3,000 dirhams for a meeting that didn't happen. He offered her tea. They talked. Katha found herself sharing things she rarely told anyone. Her father's death. Her family's struggles. The pressure of being their sole support. Sheikh Talal listened. Really listened. He told her about his own life. Growing up in a royal family where every decision was made for him. Education. Career. Marriage. Children. All chosen by family and tradition. He described feeling trapped in someone else's life. For an hour, they talked as 2 people who understood loneliness despite being surrounded by millions. When Katha left, something had shifted. The 4th meeting, March 7th, there was no pretense. No businessmen. No translation work. Sheikh Talal called her directly. He was honest. He wanted to see her. Not for work. Just to see her. To talk. Katha knew what this meant. He was married. She was Catholic. This violated everything she believed. But she was 29 years old and had spent her entire adult life sacrificing, being responsible, doing the right thing. And here was someone who saw her, wanted her, not for what she could provide but for her. She said yes. The affair began in March 2019. Twice a week, usually Tuesdays and Thursdays, Katha would drive to the villa around 8 p.m., leave around midnight. Sheikh Talal was attentive. He asked about her day, her thoughts, her dreams. He gave her gifts, Cartier bracelet, a Chanel handbag, envelopes of cash, 5,000 to 10,000 dirhams at a time. He said he wanted to ease her burden. The amounts meant nothing to him but could mean everything to her. Katha sent most of it home. Her brother's tuition, her mother's medical bills, house repairs. She told herself she wasn't selling herself. She cared for him. This was real. The money was just his way of caring for her too. For 6 months, the bubble held. The villa was their world. Outside those walls, they never saw each other. He never called from his personal phone, only from a separate phone kept for business. They never went out in public. Never were photographed together. The relationship was entirely contained. Twice a week. For hours. A secret life built on stolen time and unspoken rules. Then September 2019 shattered everything. Katha's period didn't come. She waited a week. 2 weeks. She knew. On September 18th, she bought a pregnancy test. Positive. She bought 3 more. All positive. Katha was pregnant. 11 weeks. She was carrying Sheikh Talal's child. She waited a week before telling him, trying to convince herself that her hopeful scenario was possible. Maybe this was their chance for something real. On September 24th, during their Tuesday meeting, Katha told him. She tried to frame it positively. She was pregnant. It was unexpected, but maybe it was meant to be. Sheikh Talal's reaction was immediate. Cold. Clinical. She would have an abortion. He would arrange everything. Private clinic. The best doctors. She'd be in and out in a day. The problem would be solved. Katha refused. She couldn't. Her faith. Her beliefs. Everything she'd been raised to hold sacred made abortion impossible. She believed life began at conception. Terminating this pregnancy would be murder. Sheikh Talal's demeanor changed. The warmth vanished, replaced by something harder. He told her she was being naive, stupid, reckless. Did she understand what this meant? Pregnancy outside marriage was illegal in the UAE. For both of them, she could be arrested, deported. But for him, the consequences were catastrophic. He was a public figure, family man. If this became known, he would lose everything. His marriage would end. Divorce meant losing half his fortune. The scandal would destroy his standing in society, his business relationships, his family's name. Criminal prosecution for adultery meant prison. Public disgrace. Generational shame. He gave Katha 1 week to reconsider, to understand that what she was proposing would destroy not just his life, but hers. She'd be deported anyway. She'd return to the Philippines unemployed, pregnant, disgraced. Her family would be ashamed. Her career would be over. The money she'd been sending home would stop. Her brothers would have to leave university again. Her mother would have to go back to working 3 jobs. All because Katha was too stubborn to accept a simple medical procedure. September 24th to November 12th, 2019. 7 weeks. The relationship deteriorated into something toxic. Threatening. Sheikh Talal's messages, sent through an encrypted app, escalated from persuasive to menacing. September 27th. Have you thought about what we discussed? You need to be reasonable. October 2nd. Pregnancy hormones affect judgment. Let me arrange the clinic visit. October 15th. Think about your family, Katha. They depend on you. If you lose your job, lose your visa, what happens to them? October 22nd. You're being incredibly selfish. You're going to destroy my life, my children's lives. For what? October 28th. People who threaten men like me don't fare well in this city. That's not a threat. It's a fact. Foreigners disappear here all the time. November 5th. Last chance. Handle this or I will. Katha's responses showed growing fear but also resolve. October 3rd. I can't do what you're asking. I won't. It's my baby. Our baby. October 16th. I'm going back to the Philippines in December. I'll raise the child there. You'll never see me again. I just need you to acknowledge the baby. Send support. October 29th. Don't threaten me. If anything happens to me, I've told people about us. That last message was a lie, a desperate bluff. Katha had told no one. She was too ashamed, too afraid of judgment. But she hoped the lie would protect her, make him think twice. Didn't. November 8th. You told people? Who? Give me names. Now. November 9th. You're lying. If you told anyone, I'd already know. My reach in this city is longer than you understand. November 12th, 2019. Katha's last day alive. She worked a full day at the Philippine embassy, translating for a trade delegation. Her colleague, Jose Reyes, later testified that Katha seemed distracted, nervous. She kept checking her phone. She dropped papers twice, unusual for someone normally so composed. At 6 p.m., the meeting ended. Security footage shows Katha at her desk, locking files, shutting down her computer. Her hands are shaking. She takes several deep breaths, as if steeling herself. At 6:47 p.m., she leaves the embassy building. At 7:30 p.m., Katha stopped at a convenience store in Dera. Security footage shows her purchasing water and a protein bar. She sits in her car for 20 minutes, eating slowly, staring at her phone. At 8:43 p.m., security cameras at the Al-Barari compound entrance captured Katha's car arriving. She showed her ID to the guard, gave Villa 23's address. The guard waved her through. She parked in the guest area. And then she sat in her car. For 4 minutes and 17 seconds, Katha Santos sat in her parked car. She checked her phone 6 times. She was clearly afraid. But she got out anyway. She walked to Villa 23. At 9:02 p.m., Sheikh Talal's black Mercedes arrived. He parked in the private garage. GPS data from both their phones confirmed they were both inside by 9:10 p.m. What happened inside the villa over the next 2 hours and 13 minutes would only be known because of one device. Katha's phone. The rose gold iPhone 11 she kept in her purse. At 10:38 p.m., Katha activated the voice memo app. She hit record. The phone captured the next 47 minutes. Every word. Every sound. The recording begins with voices already raised. Katha, I can't do this anymore, Talal. I've tried, but I can't. The guilt is killing me. Your wife deserves to know the truth. Sheikh Talal. The truth? The truth is you're destroying everything. My family. My life. Everything I've built. Katha, I'm not destroying anything. You did this. You started this affair. You got me pregnant. Sheikh Talal. And I gave you a solution. Clean, simple solution. But you're too stubborn, too foolish to take it. Katha, I'm not killing my baby. Our baby. Sheikh Talal. There is no our baby. There's a problem, and problems get solved. The argument continues for 12 minutes. Katha's voice grows more emotional. Sheikh Talal's grows colder. Then at minute 14 something changes. Katha's voice, I'm leaving. I'm going to the embassy tomorrow. I'm telling them everything. You can't threaten me anymore. Sounds of sudden movement. A chair scraping. Footsteps. Katha screaming. Let go of me. Stop. What are you doing? Sheikh Talal. You need to calm down. You need to think clearly. Katha. Get your hands off me. Stop. A struggle. Katha's breathing panicked. Sheikh Talal's voice calm. Controlled. Terrifying in its composure. You want to threaten me? You want to destroy my life? Let's see how you feel after some time to think. Katha. What are you? No. No. Talal, no. The sound of something heavy. Metal. A door. Katha's voice suddenly muffled. Distant. Talal. Let me out. Talal. Sheikh Talal's voice. Clear. Close to the phone before it was thrown in with her. You'll stay there until you understand what you were about to do. Katha screaming. Let me out. Please. Talal, please. A beep. Electronic. The safe lock engaging. Then Katha's voice, now enclosed, echoing in the confined space. No. No, no, no. Please. God, please. For the next 33 minutes, the recording captures Katha's deteriorating condition. First, she, Our Father, who art in heaven. Minute 42, just breathing, rapid, desperate, gasping. Minute 47, the recording ends. Either the phone died or Katha lost consciousness. The medical examiner would later determine that Katha Santos died somewhere between 2 o'clock and 4 a.m. on November 13th, approximately 4 to 6 hours after being sealed inside. Cause of death was asphyxiation combined with hyperthermia. The safe's interior reached 104 degrees Fahrenheit. The oxygen ran out slowly. Katha suffocated and overheated simultaneously over several hours. It was not quick. It was agony. The forensic evidence told the rest. Katha's fingernails were broken and bloody. She'd clawed at the safe's interior desperately, tearing her nails down to the quick. DNA matched the scratches inside to her fingers. Deep, frantic marks of someone fighting for life. Her wrists and ankles had bruising consistent with being forcibly restrained before being placed inside. The safe's internal emergency release mechanism had been deliberately disabled. Someone had used a tool to remove it. Premeditation. The electronic lock kept a digital log. The safe was locked at 11:23 p.m. on November 12th, not opened until 6:47 a.m. on November 14th. 34 hours and 28 minutes. During those 34 hours, the log showed 5 attempts to unlock from inside. Katha had found the disabled emergency release, tried to activate it 5 times. Each attempt recorded. Each attempt failed. She'd known the mechanism was broken. She'd known she was trapped. At 7:03 a.m., November 14, 2019, Dubai Police Criminal Investigation Department received the call. Suspicious death at Al-Barari Villa Compound, Villa number 23. Lieutenant Colonel Hassan Al-Mazrouei, 15 years with Homicide Division, arrived at 7:28 a.m. with his team. Al-Mazrouei was known for 2 things: his methodical approach to crime scenes and his refusal to bow to influence, regardless of who was involved. He'd put away businessmen, minor officials, even a distant royal cousin in 2016 for fraud. His reputation was incorruptible, which made him either the best or worst detective to catch this case, depending on whose side you were on. The scene told a story before anyone spoke a word. The bedroom was immaculate. Too immaculate. The marble floors gleamed as if freshly cleaned. There was a faint antiseptic smell in the air, the kind left by industrial-strength cleaning products. The safe stood in the corner, door now open, interior visible. Dark. Empty except for some scattered papers. And on the floor in front of it, covered by a white sheet the paramedics had placed, was Katha Santos' body. Sheikh Talal sat on the edge of the bed, 6 feet from the covered body. He was wearing a freshly pressed white thobe. His hands were folded in his lap. His expression was carefully neutral, the face of someone who'd had time to compose himself. Priya, the housemaid, sat in a chair near the window, still crying, being comforted by a female police officer. Al-Mazrouei knelt beside the body, lifted the sheet. His face remained impassive, years of training keeping his reactions controlled. But his hand paused for a moment when he saw her face. The frozen expression of terror and agony. The clouded eyes still open. The mouth locked in a silent scream. Her hands, those clawed, rigid hands with the bloody, broken fingernails. He'd seen death in many forms over 15 years. But this was different. This spoke of prolonged suffering, desperate struggle, slow agony. He stood, turned to Sheikh Talal. "Tell me what happened." His voice was calm, professional, but there was an edge to it. Sheikh Talal's first story was simple, practiced. Katha Santos had come to the villa the evening of November 12th. She was a translator who occasionally did private work for him. They'd had a business discussion that became personal. She'd expressed interest in trying something exciting, adventurous. She'd asked him to lock her in the safe briefly as part of an intimate game. He'd agreed, thinking it would be just a few minutes. He'd locked her inside for what he thought was 5 minutes, maybe 10 at most. But then he'd received an important business phone call. He'd gotten distracted. When he returned to let her out, he realized 30 minutes had passed. He'd panicked, opened the safe, and found her unconscious. He'd tried to revive her, but she wasn't breathing. He'd called his private doctor for advice. The doctor had told him to call the police immediately, which he'd done, but there'd been confusion, delays. By the time the housemaid arrived for her morning shift and they'd opened the safe together, it was too late. Al-Mazrouei listened without interrupting. Then he asked to see the safe. The detective examined it carefully. German-made Waldorf Prestige 7000. He knew these models. Expensive. Designed for maximum security. Fireproof, waterproof, and soundproof. He looked inside. The interior was wiped clean, spotless. He ran his finger along one of the steel walls. His fingertip came away with the faint residue of cleaning solution. Someone had scrubbed this safe. Recently. Thoroughly. He looked at the electronic keypad. This model keeps a digital log of when it's locked and unlocked. Correct? Sheikh Talal hesitated for just a fraction of a second. "I believe so, yes. We'll need to access that log." Al-Mazrouei turned to his forensic technician. "Get me the electronic records from this safe. Timestamps for every lock and unlock over the past week." He looked back at Sheikh Talal. "You said you locked her in for 30 minutes? "Yes, approximately. Maybe 35 at most. I lost track of time during the phone call." "And this happened on the evening of November 12th? "Yes." "What time did she leave?" Sheikh Talal paused. She didn't leave. She did leave, but later, after I let her out. She was upset, disoriented, but she was alive when she left. This must have happened later. Maybe she came back. I don't know. The story was already changing. Al-Mazrouei noted this. So she left alive, but then somehow ended up dead inside your locked safe the next morning? I don't understand it either. Perhaps she returned later and somehow got trapped inside. With the safe locked from the outside? With an electronic code only you know. Sheikh Talal said nothing. The forensic technician approached Al-Mazrouei. Sir, I've accessed the safe's electronic log. He held up a tablet displaying the data. Al-Mazrouei read it. His expression hardened. According to this log, the safe was locked at 11:23 p.m. on November 12th. It was not opened again until this morning, 6:47 a.m. November 14th. That's not 30 minutes, Sheikh Talal. That's 34 hours and 24 minutes. The color drained from Sheikh Talal's face. That can't be right. The system must be malfunctioning. The system also shows 5 attempts to unlock the safe from the inside. Failed attempts. There's an internal emergency release mechanism on this model. Did you disable it? I don't know what you're talking about. Al-Mazrouei walked to the safe, examined the interior wall where the emergency release should be located. There was a panel, but the mechanism behind it had been removed. Deliberately, the screws showed tool marks, fresh marks. Someone disabled this safety feature. Recently. Who had access to this safe? Sheikh Talal stood up. His composure was cracking. I want to speak with my lawyer before answering any more questions. That's your right. But I'm taking you to the station for formal questioning. And I'm seizing your phones, all of them. Your computers. Security footage from this villa. Everything. Al-Mazrouei turned to his officers. Take him in. Politely, but take him in. While Sheikh Talal was being transported to the police station, the forensic team processed the scene. The medical examiner, Dr. Fatima Al-Qasimi, 20 years of experience, conducted her preliminary assessment of the body. She noted everything aloud for her voice recorder, documenting the evidence. Female victim appears to be Southeast Asian descent, late 20s. Rigor mortis fully established. Liver mortis fixed in dependent areas. Time of death estimated between 30 to 40 hours prior to examination. Significant signs of distress and prolonged suffering visible. Fingernails broken and bloody. Tissue samples present under remaining nails. Defensive wounds on hands and wrists. Bruising on both wrists consistent with restraint, approximately 48 hours old. Bruising on ankles, same timeline. Facial expression indicates terminal distress. Petechial hemorrhaging in eyes consistent with asphyxiation. Will confirm cause of death during full autopsy, but preliminary assessment suggests asphyxiation, possibly combined with hyperthermia given the enclosed space. She paused, looked at the safe, then back at the body. This woman fought to survive, fought hard. These injuries tell the story of someone who clawed and struggled and did everything humanly possible to escape. This was not quick. This was prolonged agony. One of the forensic technicians approached. Doctor, we found something. He was holding an evidence bag. Inside was a rose gold iPhone 11. This was clutched in her left hand. Had to carefully pry her fingers open to retrieve it. The screen is cracked, but the phone is still operational. Battery at 2%. Dr. Al-Qasimi took the evidence bag, examined the phone through the clear plastic. Bag it properly. Get it to digital forensics immediately. If she was conscious with a phone, she might have tried to call for help. There could be messages, call logs, something. At the police station, Sheikh Talal sat in an interrogation room with his lawyer, Khalid Al-Shamsi, one of Dubai's most expensive defense attorneys. Al-Shamsi had built his career defending wealthy clients in difficult situations. He knew how to manage investigations, how to apply pressure through connections, how to make problems disappear. But Al-Mazrouei was not a detective who responded to pressure. At 9:15 a.m., the interrogation began. Al-Mazrouei placed a tablet on the table, turned it to face Sheikh Talal. This is the security camera footage from your villa bedroom. It shows you and Katha Santos entering at 11:18 p.m. on November 12th. It shows an argument, a physical struggle. It shows you forcing her into the safe, locking her inside, then leaving. It shows you returning 33 minutes later, staring at the locked safe, then leaving again. And it shows you not returning until 34 hours later when you opened it with the housemaid present. Would you like to change your story now? Sheikh Talal watched the footage. His face was stone. Al-Shamsi leaned forward. My client declines to answer questions at this time. We'll need to review all evidence before providing a statement. That's fine, Al-Mazrui said. But you should know we also have her phone. We're accessing it now. If there's anything on that phone that contradicts your client's story, this goes from bad to much worse. He stood. Think carefully about what you want to say, because the evidence is already saying plenty. By 11:30 a.m., digital forensics had cracked Katha's phone. The technician, Yusuf Al, specialist in data recovery and mobile forensics, found the voice memo app. One recording, 47 minutes long, dated November 12th, 10:38 p.m. to 11:25 p.m. He played the first 30 seconds. His face went pale. He immediately called Al-Mazrui. Sir, you need to hear this. Now. Al-Mazrui arrived at the forensics lab. Yusuf played the recording. All 47 minutes. The argument. The struggle. Katha being forced into the safe. Her pleas. Her prayers. Her slow death. When it finished, the room was silent. Al-Mazrui's hands were clenched into fists. His jaw was tight. He'd been a homicide detective for 15 years. He'd seen terrible things. But hearing a woman's voice as she slowly suffocated and overheated to death over the course of nearly an hour, begging for mercy that never came, was something different entirely. Make copies, he said quietly. Multiple copies. Store them in separate secure locations. This recording is now the most important piece of evidence in this case. Protect it. At 2 p.m., Al-Mazrui returned to the interrogation room. He placed a small speaker on the table. Before we continue, I'm going to play something for you. This audio was recovered from Katha Santos' phone. It was recorded the night of November 12th, starting at 10:38 p.m. It captured everything that happened in your villa. He pressed play. Katha's voice filled the room. The argument, the struggle, the sounds of her being fought. I'll leave Dubai. I'll never contact you again. Al-Mazrui let it play for 5 minutes before stopping it. He looked at Sheikh Talal. There are 42 more minutes of this. Her begging, her praying, her dying. Do you want to hear the rest? Or do you want to tell me the truth now? Sheikh Talal's composure finally broke. His hands were shaking. His lawyer put a hand on his arm, but Sheikh Talal shook it off. She was going to destroy everything, he said quietly. She was pregnant. She was going to tell my wife, tell the embassy, tell everyone. She was going to ruin my life, ruin my family. I just wanted her to understand, to think about what she was doing, to realize the consequences. I didn't mean for her to die. I was going to let her out. But then I thought, maybe a few more hours, maybe overnight. Maybe if she suffered enough, she'd understand. She'd keep quiet. I didn't know it would kill her. I didn't mean to kill her. The room was silent. Al-Shamsi looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. Al-Mazrui leaned forward. You locked a pregnant woman inside a sealed safe for 34 hours. You disabled the emergency release so she couldn't escape. You left her there to suffocate and overheat. You heard her begging for mercy. And you did nothing. That's not manslaughter, Sheikh Talal. That's murder. Premeditated murder. The arrest of Sheikh Talal bin Al-Muhari sent shockwaves through Dubai. For 3 days, UAE authorities attempted to suppress the story. Local media received calls from officials suggesting the case involved sensitive matters best not publicized. But the story was too big to contain. The Philippine embassy demanded transparency, threatened diplomatic action if the case wasn't fully prosecuted. The Filipino community in the UAE, over 680,000 strong, began organizing. Private protests, Social media campaigns. By November 18th, international media picked up the story. Within 48 hours, it was headline news across Asia, the Middle East, Europe. A Filipina embassy translator, pregnant, locked in a safe by her married Emirati lover and left to die. The details were too shocking, too tragic, too perfectly designed to capture global attention. The UAE government faced a choice: protect one of their own and face international condemnation, or prosecute fully and demonstrate their justice system applied to everyone. They chose prosecution. Sheikh Talal was formally charged on November 25, 2019. For counts: premeditated murder, kidnapping, adultery, and abuse of power. Bail was denied. The trial was set for February 2020, fast-tracked due to the overwhelming evidence and international pressure. The lead prosecutor was Amina Al-Suwaidi, 42 years old, Dubai's first female chief prosecutor. She'd built her reputation on difficult cases, refusing to back down regardless of the defendant's status or connections. When she was assigned the Santos case, she knew it would define her career one way or another. Either she'd secure justice for a murdered foreign worker against a wealthy sheikh, or she'd be crushed by the machine of influence and power that protected the elite. She chose to fight. Al-Suwaidi spent 2 months building an airtight case. The evidence was overwhelming, but she knew evidence alone wasn't enough. She needed to humanize Catha Santos, make the jury see her as a real person, not just another foreign worker. She needed to make them understand what those 34 hours in the safe meant, what Catha experienced, what she felt, what she suffered, and she needed to dismantle any sympathy for Sheikh Talal, expose him not as a man who made a tragic mistake, but as a predator who deliberately murdered a vulnerable woman to protect his reputation. The trial began February 6, 2020, at the Dubai Court of First Instance. The courtroom was packed. Media from 15 countries, human rights observers, representatives from the Philippine government, members of Dubai's Filipino community who'd taken days off work to attend, and in the front row, flown to Dubai by the Philippine government, was Lourdes Santos, Catha's mother, 56 years old, wearing her best black dress, clutching a rosary in her weathered hands. She'd insisted on attending despite knowing she'd have to hear the details of her daughter's death. She needed to be there, to witness, to represent Catha when Catha could no longer speak for herself. Sheikh Talal sat at the defense table flanked by his legal team, Khalid Al-Shamsi and 2 associates, all wearing expensive suits, all projecting an air of confidence that seemed increasingly hollow as the evidence mounted. Sheikh Talal's wife had filed for divorce within a week of his arrest. His children had publicly disowned him. His business partners had severed ties. He sat alone, isolated, watching his entire life collapse in real time. Al-Suwaidi's opening statement was precise and devastating. She didn't raise her voice, didn't need to. She simply laid out the facts. On November 12, 2019, Catha Santos, a 29-year-old translator for the Philippine embassy, drove to the defendant's villa in Al-Barari. She was 11 weeks pregnant with his child. She'd been having an affair with the defendant for 8 months. When she refused to have an abortion, the defendant decided she was a threat. Problem to be eliminated. At 11:23 p.m. that night, the defendant forced Catha Santos into a safe in his bedroom. A safe whose internal emergency release he had deliberately disabled days earlier. He locked her inside, knowing she had no way to escape, and then he left. For 34 hours, Catha Santos was trapped in that steel box. The temperature inside reached 104 degrees Fahrenheit. The oxygen slowly depleted. For hours, she clawed at the walls until her fingernails broke and bled. She begged. She prayed. She screamed until her voice gave out. And then she died. Alone. In the dark. In agony. While the defendant went home to his wife and children and slept in his bed, Catha Santos was dying in his safe. This was not a crime of passion. This was not an accident. This was calculated, cold-blooded murder. And the evidence will prove it beyond any doubt. The prosecution's case unfolded over 3 weeks. First, the security footage. The courtroom watched in complete silence as the 47-second video played. Katha and Sheikh Talal entering the bedroom. The argument. The struggle. Katha being forced into the safe. The door closing. The lock engaging. Sheikh Talal leaving. Then returning 33 minutes later to stare at the locked safe before leaving again. The footage was played 3 times. Each time, several members of the jury looked away. Lourdes Santos watched every second, tears streaming down her face, never making a sound. Next came the forensic evidence. Dr. Fatima Al-Qasimi testified about Katha's autopsy. Cause of death. Asphyxiation combined with hyperthermia. Time of death. Between 2 o'clock and 4 a.m., November 13th, approximately 4 to 6 hours after being locked in the safe. The broken fingernails. The scratches inside the safe matching her DNA. The bruising on her wrists and ankles indicating she'd been forcibly restrained before being placed inside. The petechial hemorrhaging in her eyes. Every detail documented. Every detail painting a picture of prolonged suffering. The electronic lock specialist testified about the safe's digital log. Locked at 11:23 p.m., November 12th. Not opened until 6:47 a.m., November 14th. 34 hours, 28 minutes. The 5 failed attempts to activate the internal emergency release from inside. The deliberate disabling of that mechanism days before Katha's death, requiring specific tools and knowledge, proving premeditation. Then came the recording. Al-Suwaidi warned the courtroom before playing it. What you're about to hear is 47 minutes of audio captured by Katha Santos' phone. It documents her final conscious hour. It is difficult to listen to, but it is necessary, because this recording is Katha's testimony. It is her voice, from beyond death, telling us exactly what happened, telling us what the defendant did to her. She pressed play. For 47 minutes, the courtroom listened. To Katha's voice. The argument. I can't do this anymore, Talal. Your wife deserves to know the truth. The struggle. Let go of me. Stop. Being forced into the safe. What are you doing? No. Talal, no. The door closing. The lock engaging. The enclosed desperation. Talal, let me out. Please. The deteriorating please. I can't breathe. It's so hot. Please. I'll leave Dubai. I'll never contact you again. The prayers in Tagalog and English. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. The weakening voice. The gasping breaths. The final sounds before the recording ended. When the audio finished, the courtroom was silent. Several jury members were crying. Lourdes Santos had collapsed forward, her face in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. The judge called a 15-minute recess. In those 15 minutes, no one spoke. The weight of what they'd heard made words impossible. Al-Suwaidi's final piece of evidence was the pregnancy. The toxicology report confirmed Katha was 11 weeks pregnant at the time of death. DNA testing confirmed Sheikh Talal was the father. The prosecution presented text messages recovered from both phones showing the escalating threats as Katha refused to have an abortion. October 28th. People who threaten men like me don't fare well in this city. November 5th. Last chance. Handle this or I will. Al-Suwaidi addressed the jury. Sheikh Talal murdered Katha Santos to protect his reputation, to avoid scandal, to prevent divorce, to maintain his perfect public image as a devout family man. He valued his reputation more than he valued her life, more than he valued his own child's life. He locked her in that safe knowing she would suffer, knowing she would die, and when she was dead, when the problem was eliminated, he calmly returned with his housemaid and played the role of shocked discoverer. But technology betrayed him. The security camera captured his crime on video. Katha's phone captured his crime on audio. The safe's computer captured his crime in digital timestamps. And now, justice demands he pay for that crime. The defense had little room to maneuver. Al-Shamsi attempted to argue diminished capacity, claiming Sheikh Talal had been under extreme stress, not thinking clearly, that the death was a tragic accident resulting from poor judgment rather than murderous intent. He presented character witnesses, business associates who testified Sheikh Talal was generous, kind, respected. religious leaders who spoke of his charitable donations. It was a desperate strategy. The evidence was too overwhelming. The video, the audio, the timeline, the disabled emergency release. The premeditation was clear. On March 3, 2020, closing arguments concluded. Al-Suwaidi's final statement was brief. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you've seen the evidence. You've heard Katha's voice begging for her life. You've seen the defendant lock her in that safe and walk away. The question before you is not whether he killed her. The evidence proves that beyond any doubt. The question is whether you believe justice applies equally to everyone in this country, regardless of wealth or status or family connections. Katha Santos was a foreign worker. The defendant is a sheikh. But under the law, both are equal. Both deserve justice. I'm asking you to deliver that justice. Find Sheikh Talal bin Al-Muhari guilty of murder. Thank you. The jury deliberated for 7 hours. On March 4, 2020, they returned their verdict. The courtroom stood as the jury foreman read the decision. On the charge of premeditated murder, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of kidnapping, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of adultery, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of abuse of power, we find the defendant guilty. Sheikh Talal showed no emotion. Lord Santos collapsed again, this time in relief, crying, "Justice for my Katha, justice." Sentencing came 1 week later. The judge, Chief Justice Al-Hamadi, 34 years on the bench, delivered a statement before announcing the sentence. Sheikh Talal Al-Muhari, you were given every advantage in life, wealth, education, status, and you used those advantages not to help others, but to exploit a vulnerable woman. You engaged in an affair with Katha Santos knowing the power imbalance between you. When that affair produced consequences you found inconvenient, you chose murder over responsibility. You locked her in darkness and left her to die in agony. You showed her no mercy. This court will show you none. You are sentenced to life imprisonment, minimum 25 years before parole eligibility, plus a fine of 500,000 dirhams. You will spend the rest of your productive life behind bars understanding what Katha Santos felt in her final hours. The horror of being trapped, the agony of being unheard, the desperate hope for mercy that never comes. May God have mercy on your soul, because this court has none. The verdict sent shockwaves beyond the courtroom walls. Within hours, news of Sheikh Talal's conviction spread across the globe. International media praised the UAE's handling of the case, calling it a watershed moment for justice in the Gulf states. Human rights organizations cautiously celebrated while noting this should be the standard, not the exception. The Filipino community in Dubai gathered outside the courthouse as the verdict was announced, many holding candles and photos of Katha Santos. When word spread that the jury had found Sheikh Talal guilty on all counts, the crowd erupted, cheering, crying, embracing strangers. For many overseas Filipino workers who lived daily with the vulnerability of their position, who'd seen friends and family members mistreated with no recourse, this verdict represented something larger than one case. It represented the possibility that justice could exist even for the powerless. That wealth and status weren't absolute shields. That their lives mattered in a system that often treated them as disposable. Lord Santos stood on the courthouse steps, surrounded by embassy officials and lawyers. She was 56 years old but looked older, the past 4 months having aged her a decade. Her face was lined with grief, but there was something else there too. Relief. Validation. The knowledge that her daughter's death hadn't been swept away, forgotten, dismissed as another foreign worker who'd met an unfortunate end far from home. "My Katha is gone," Lord said in Tagalog, translated for the international press. "Nothing will bring her back. No verdict will let me hold her again. But today the world knows what happened to her. Today the man who killed her will pay. Today justice spoke her name. And that matters. That matters so much." But the legal battle wasn't over. Within 48 hours of the verdict, Sheikh Talal's legal team filed an appeal. They challenged the admissibility of the voice recording, arguing it had been obtained without proper warrant procedures. They challenged the security footage, claiming the bedroom camera violated privacy expectations. They challenged the severity of the sentence, arguing life imprisonment was disproportionate given the defendant's lack of prior violent criminal history. The appeals process would take months. During that time, Sheikh Talal remained in Al Awar Central Prison, Dubai's main detention facility. He was kept in administrative segregation for his own protection. His status as a sheikh, even a disgraced one, made him a target. Other inmates, many of them foreign workers serving time for minor offenses, had no love for a man who'd murdered a Filipina translator to protect his reputation. Prison officials feared violence if he was placed in general population. Reports from guards described Sheikh Talal as withdrawn, silent, refusing most meals. He'd lost over 30 pounds in 4 months. His family had abandoned him. His wife Sheikha Amina finalized their divorce in April 2020, taking half his fortune as settlement. His 3 sons and daughter released a public statement disavowing their father, describing his actions as horrific and unforgivable. His business empire crumbled. Partners dissolved agreements. Properties were liquidated to cover the civil judgments that were already being filed. The man who'd once been worth $470 million was being systematically stripped of everything. The civil lawsuit came swiftly. Lourdes Santos, representing her daughter's estate and the unborn child, filed a wrongful death suit seeking 10 million dirhams, approximately $2.7 million USD. The suit accused Sheikh Talal not only of murder but of systematic exploitation, emotional abuse, and the deliberate termination of 2 lives, Katha's and her unborn babies. The civil trial proceeded separately from the criminal case. Unlike criminal court, the burden of proof was lower. Preponderance of evidence rather than beyond reasonable doubt. And the evidence was overwhelming. The same security footage, the same recording, the same forensic reports. But the civil trial allowed for something the criminal trial had limited, a fuller exploration of Katha's life, her relationship with Sheikh Talal, and the systematic power imbalance that defined their affair from the beginning. Witnesses testified about Katha's character. Her roommate Carmen described Katha as responsible, careful, deeply religious. She wasn't someone who would casually have an affair, Carmen testified. When she did something that conflicted with her values, it tore her apart. She must have believed it was real, that he loved her, that there was a future, because Katha didn't compromise her faith for anything less than love. Jose Reyes, Katha's colleague from the embassy, testified about the change he'd noticed in her over the months. In early 2019, Katha seemed lighter, happier, like some weight had lifted. Then around September, October, she became anxious, jumpy. She'd check her phone constantly with this look of dread. I asked if everything was okay. She said yes, but I could tell she was lying. I wish I'd pushed harder. Maybe if I had. His voice broke. He couldn't finish. The defense argued Katha had been a willing participant in the affair, that she'd accepted money and gifts, that she bore some responsibility for the situation that led to her death. It was a despicable strategy, victim blaming from beyond the grave. But Al-Shamsi was fighting for his career now, trying to salvage something from the wreckage. The judge wasn't receptive. The victim is not on trial here, Judge Katham Al-Hashimi stated firmly. Ms. Santos' choices regarding the affair, however you wish to characterize them, do not justify or excuse her murder. She could have been the one who initiated the relationship. She could have accepted 1 million dirhams in gifts. None of that gives anyone the right to lock her in a safe to die. Move on to relevant arguments or rest your case. On June 12, 2020, exactly 7 months after Katha's death, the civil court rendered its verdict. Sheikh Talal was ordered to pay 8.5 million dirhams, $2.3 million, to Katha's family, plus an additional 200,000 dirhams, $54,000, symbolically designated for the unborn child's estate. All court costs and legal fees were assessed against the defendant. The judgment also included a rare provision: a formal written apology to be published in UAE national newspapers and international media, signed by Sheikh Talal, acknowledging his actions and the harm caused. Sheikh Talal refused to sign. His lawyers advised him it could be used against him in the ongoing criminal appeal. The court responded by adding an additional 500,000 dirham penalty for contempt. The money didn't matter to Lourdes. She'd never pursued this for wealth. But she insisted on the apology. "He needs to say her name," Lourdes told her lawyers. "He needs to admit what he did. Not in a courtroom where he has to, but in his own words. Katha deserves that." The apology never came. Instead, Sheikh Talal's assets were seized. 4 of his commercial properties were auctioned to satisfy the civil judgment. The money was transferred to an account established for the Santos family. Back in the Philippines, Katha's brothers Paulo and Marcus used a portion of the settlement to complete their university educations. Paulo graduated with an engineering degree in 2021. Marcus finished his accounting degree in 2022. Both found good jobs in Manila, well-paying positions that allowed them to support their mother so she never had to work again. Lourdes used part of the settlement to establish the Katha Santos Memorial Foundation, a non-profit organization dedicated to protecting overseas Filipino workers, particularly women in vulnerable positions in the Middle East. The foundation provided legal assistance, emergency housing, and repatriation support for OFWs facing abuse or exploitation. It funded hotlines staffed 24/7 by volunteers fluent in multiple languages. It created educational programs teaching workers about their rights, warning signs of exploitative relationships, and documentation practices to protect themselves. Within 2 years, the foundation had helped over 1,200 Filipino workers in the UAE alone. The family also built a small community center in their barangay in Quezon City. The Katha Santos Community Center offered free tutoring for children, job training for adults, and gathering space for neighborhood events. Above the entrance was a bronze plaque with Katha's photo and an inscription, "In memory of Katha Santos, 1989 to 2019, daughter, sister, friend. Her sacrifice gave us a future. Her death demands we protect each other." Meanwhile, the criminal appeals process ground forward. Sheikh Talal's first appeal was heard in July 2020. His lawyers argued the trial had been tainted by media coverage and public pressure, that no fair jury could have been assembled given the international attention. They argued the voice recording should have been excluded as it was obtained from a phone seized without the defendant present to witness the search. They argued the sentence was excessive compared to similar cases. On September 15, 2020, the appellate court issued its decision. Appeal denied. The verdict was sound. The evidence was properly obtained. The sentence was appropriate given the premeditated nature of the crime and the particularly cruel method of killing. Sheikh Talal filed a second appeal to a higher court. Same arguments, different panel of judges. This time his legal team added a new angle. They claimed the security camera footage violated UAE privacy laws because the bedroom was a private space where individuals have an expectation of privacy. The prosecution countered that the camera was installed by the defendant himself, in his own property, eliminating any reasonable privacy expectation. Furthermore, the footage captured a crime in progress, making its content admissible regardless of privacy concerns. On December 8, 2020, the second appeal was denied. The court's written opinion included a scathing paragraph. The defendant installed security cameras throughout his villa, including his bedroom, presumably to protect his property and monitor his space. He cannot now claim those same cameras violated his privacy when they documented his criminal acts. Justice does not provide sanctuary to those who create evidence of their own crimes. Sheikh Talal had one final avenue, the UAE Federal Supreme Court. This appeal would take months to process. In the meantime, he remained in prison, his life reduced to a 10 by 12-foot cell, his days marked by the routine of incarceration. Guards reported he spent most of his time staring at the walls, refusing to participate in prison programs or socialize with other inmates. He aged rapidly. His hair turned completely gray within 6 months. His health deteriorated. In March 2021, he suffered what prison medical staff believed was a minor stroke. He recovered but was left with a slight facial droop and weakness in his left hand. The final appeal was heard in May 2021, 18 months after Katha's death. Sheikh Talal's lawyers made their last arguments, focusing on constitutional questions about due process and proportionality of punishment. On June 30, 2021, the UAE Federal Supreme Court issued its final ruling. All previous verdicts upheld, sentence confirmed, case closed. No further appeals possible. Sheikh Talal bin al-Muhairi would serve a minimum of 25 years in prison. He would be 77 years old before he'd even be eligible for parole. Realistically, given the nature of his crime and the international attention it received, parole would likely never be granted. He would die in prison. The case was over. Legally, Catha Santos had received justice. But for those who loved her, justice was just a word. It didn't bring her back. It didn't heal the wound of her absence. Lourdes visited Catha's grave every day. The cemetery in Quezon City, a modest plot under a tree. The headstone read, Catha Santos, December 3, 1989 to November 13, 2019. Beloved daughter, sister, and mother-to-be. Taken too soon, never forgotten. Fresh flowers always covered the grave. Candles burned constantly, replaced by family and strangers alike. Catha had become a symbol, a martyr, a reminder of the cost of silence and the necessity of speaking truth to power. Students visited the grave before exams, asking Catha to bless their studies as she'd once blessed her family with her success. OFWs visited before leaving for overseas work, praying for Catha's protection. The grave became a pilgrimage site, not from organized religion but from organic community grief and solidarity. 3 years after Catha Santos' death, her story continued to resonate across borders and cultures. What began as a tragic murder case had evolved into something larger, a movement, a conversation, a reckoning with systems of power that enabled such tragedies. In November 2022, Netflix released a 2-part documentary titled The Safe, Catha Santos Story. The documentary featured interviews with investigators, lawyers, Catha's family, and experts on migrant worker rights. It included the security footage and excerpts from the voice recording, carefully edited and preceded by warnings about disturbing content. The documentary didn't sensationalize. It didn't exploit. Instead, it humanized. It showed Catha's life before Dubai, her achievements, her dreams, her sacrifices. It showed the systemic vulnerabilities that made women like her targets for exploitation. It showed how wealth and power could corrupt, how one man's desire to protect his reputation cost 2 lives. The documentary was viewed by over 40 million people worldwide within the first month. It sparked conversations in living rooms, classrooms, and government offices. The Philippines incorporated portions of the documentary into mandatory pre-departure orientation seminars for overseas Filipino workers. The message was clear. Know your rights, document everything, tell someone where you are, never let yourself become isolated. In Dubai, the case forced institutional changes. The Philippine embassy implemented Catha's protocol, a new safety system requiring embassy staff to log all private meetings with foreign nationals, check in before and after such meetings, and immediately report any concerns about pressure or threats. The protocol extended to all Filipino workers in the UAE through embassy-run orientation programs. A 24-hour emergency hotline was established, staffed by multilingual operators trained to handle crisis situations. In the first year alone, the hotline received over 2,800 calls, 340 of which resulted in emergency interventions, workers being extracted from abusive situations before tragedy occurred. The UAE government, sensitive to international criticism about migrant worker protections, enacted legislative reforms. The Foreign Worker Protection Act of 2021 strengthened penalties for crimes against foreign workers, removed certain legal privileges previously granted to Emirati citizens in criminal cases, and required mandatory investigation of any death involving a foreign worker regardless of circumstances. Critics noted these reforms didn't go far enough, that systemic problems remained. But they acknowledged it was progress. Progress paid for by Catha Santos' life. Other Gulf states watched the case closely. Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, Oman, all grappled with similar issues regarding migrant worker populations. Some implemented reforms modeled on UAE's changes. Others resisted, unwilling to disrupt the systems that benefited their citizens at the expense of foreign laborers. The conversation was no longer avoidable. In academic circles, the case became a study in digital forensics and technology as witness. Law schools across the Middle East added the Santos case to their curriculum as an example of how modern technology, security cameras, smartphone recordings, electronic logs, creates evidence that's nearly impossible to refute. The voice recording in particular became a subject of analysis. Legal scholars debated the ethics of using such intimate documentation of someone's final moments. Was it exploitation? Or was it honoring the victim's clear intention to document what was happening to her? The consensus leaned toward the latter. Catha Santos made a conscious choice in her final hour to hit record. She knew her affair with Sheikh Talal was dangerous. She knew his threats were real. When she drove to that villa on November 12, 2019, she armed herself with the only weapon available to her: documentation. That recording wasn't an accident. It was preparation. It was insurance. It was her voice refusing to be silenced even if he silenced her body. Technology advocates pointed to the case as validation for programs teaching vulnerable populations how to use their smartphones as protection tools, how to set up automatic recording apps, how to enable location sharing, how to store evidence in cloud services that couldn't be physically destroyed. The message was empowerment through technology. You're never completely defenseless as long as you can document. Lourdes Santos became an unlikely activist. She never sought the role, but grief and purpose carried her forward. She spoke at United Nations forums on migrant worker rights. She testified before the Philippine Congress about the need for stronger protections for OFWs. She visited universities across Southeast Asia, always telling Catha's story, always showing that 47-second security footage, always asking students, if you saw this happening, would you intervene? If your friend told you she was afraid, would you help her? Or would you stay silent? Her speeches were powerful not because of rhetorical flourishes but because of raw authenticity. She was a mother who'd lost her daughter in the most horrific way imaginable, yet she channeled that pain into protecting other daughters, other mothers, other families. Catha believed she was powerless, Lourdes would say. She thought a poor Filipina translator couldn't stand up to a wealthy sheikh. She thought no one would believe her. She thought she had to handle everything alone. She was wrong. But by the time she realized she was wrong, it was too late. I tell her story so other women realize they're not powerless. So they know they don't have to face these situations alone. So they understand that speaking up, asking for help, walking away, these aren't signs of weakness. They're acts of survival. The Catha Santos Memorial Foundation expanded beyond the Philippines. By 2023, it had chapters in 6 countries: Philippines, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Hong Kong, and Singapore. The foundation provided services to over 5,000 workers annually. It funded legal battles, repatriated workers fleeing abuse, and lobbied governments for policy changes. The foundation's annual gala in Manila became a major event, attracting celebrities, politicians, and business leaders. Each year, the foundation presented the Catha Santos Courage Award to an individual or organization that exemplified bravery in protecting vulnerable workers. Recipients included a Bangladeshi labor rights activist who'd been imprisoned for organizing workers, a Saudi journalist who'd exposed systematic abuse of domestic workers despite death threats, and an Indian nurse who'd created an underground network helping women escape exploitative employment contracts in the Gulf states. Back in Dubai, the Al-Barari villa where Catha died stood empty for 2 years. No one would rent it. The property carried a stigma, a darkness that no amount of cleaning or remodeling could erase. Everyone knew what had happened there. Eventually, the villa was purchased by a Philippine non-profit organization for significantly below market value. They converted it into a shelter for Filipino workers in crisis situations. Women fleeing abusive employers. Workers whose contracts had been illegally terminated. People who needed a safe place while their cases were processed. The organization renamed it Catha's House. The bedroom where Catha died was converted into a meditation room and small chapel. The safe was removed. Some had wanted it destroyed, others preserved as a memorial. Ultimately, it was determined that keeping an object associated with such trauma in a space meant for healing was inappropriate. It was donated to the Dubai Police Museum as a historical artifact, part of an exhibit on forensic technology and famous cases. The villa's transformation was symbolic, a place of death and exploitation becoming a place of safety and protection. Evil's territory reclaimed for good. In the meditation room, a portrait of Katha hung on the wall, painted from a photo taken 2 months before her death, showing her smiling, confident, full of life. Beneath the portrait, an inscription, Katha Santos, 1989 to 2019. She died alone but lives on in everyone we help. May we never forget that one person's silence can cost a life, and one person's voice can save hundreds. Sheikh Talal bin al-Muhari remained in Al-Awar Central Prison. 5 years into his sentence, he was 57 years old. His health had deteriorated significantly. The stroke in 2021 left lasting effects. Prison medical records from 2023 showed high blood pressure, diabetes, chronic pain conditions. He'd become an old man prematurely, aged by guilt and confinement and the total destruction of everything he'd built. He never expressed remorse publicly. His lawyers advised him that any admission of wrongdoing could be used against him if somehow, impossibly, another appeal avenue opened. So he remained silent. But guards reported that sometimes, late at night, they'd hear him crying in his cell. Whether those tears were for Katha, for himself, or for the life he'd destroyed was impossible to know. In 2024, a reporter from Al Jazeera requested an interview. Sheikh Talal declined. His lawyer released a statement. "My client maintains his privacy and has nothing further to say about the case." That silence spoke volumes. A man who'd once commanded rooms, brokered deals worth millions, been photographed with dignitaries and celebrated in society pages, reduced to silence in a cell. His entire legacy now defined by 47 seconds of security footage and 47 minutes of audio recording a woman's death. For Katha's family, life moved forward because it had to, but Katha's absence marked every moment. Paolo married in 2023. At his wedding, an empty chair sat at the family table, decorated with white flowers and Katha's photograph. When asked to speak about his sister during the reception, Paolo's voice broke. "Katha should be here. She should be dancing. She should be the one teasing me about marriage and giving unsolicited advice about relationships. She should be an aunt to the children I hope to have. She should be living her life. Instead, she's a memory, a story, a lesson. I graduated university because of her sacrifice. I have this life because she gave hers, working overseas, sending money home. And when she finally found something for herself, when she finally let herself hope for love and a future, it destroyed her. I'm grateful for what she gave us. I'm angry at what was taken from her. Both things are true and will always be true." Marcus, the younger brother, visited Katha's grave every Sunday without fail. He'd bring fresh flowers, light new candles, sit beside the headstone for an hour. Sometimes he'd read to her books she'd loved when they were kids. Sometimes he'd update her on family news, speaking to the marble as if she could hear. Sometimes he'd just sit in silence, keeping her company the way she'd kept the family together when they'd had nothing. Their mother Lourdes, now 60 years old, had aged into her grief. Her face showed the years of pain but also the years of purpose. She'd channeled loss into action, despair into determination. She still visited Katha's grave daily, but now she also spent her days at the foundation offices, working tirelessly to protect other families from experiencing what hers had endured. "I can't bring Katha back," she told an interviewer in 2024, 5 years after her daughter's death. "Nothing I do will let me hold her again, hear her voice, watch her live the life she deserved. But I can make sure her death meant something. I can make sure other mothers don't lose their daughters the way I lost mine. That's not healing. I'll never heal. But it's purpose. And purpose is what keeps me breathing when grief makes me want to stop." The case continued to be referenced in courtrooms, in advocacy campaigns, in documentaries, in academic papers. The Katha Santos case became shorthand for a specific type of crime: the exploitation and murder of vulnerable foreign workers by wealthy employers or powerful individuals who believed their status placed them above consequences. The phrase entered the lexicon of human rights discourse. 5 years after her death, on November 13, 2024, memorial services were held simultaneously in Manila, Dubai, and 10 other cities around the world. Thousands attended. Candles were lit. Songs were sung. Her name was spoken by strangers who'd never met her, but felt connected to her story, her struggle, her sacrifice. At the Manila service, held at St. Mary's Cathedral where Katha had dreamed of being married someday, the Archbishop spoke about justice and mercy and the human cost of silence. Katha Santos was not perfect, he said. She made choices that conflicted with her faith. She loved a man she shouldn't have loved. She found herself in a situation that compromised her values. But imperfection doesn't justify murder. Mistakes don't deserve death. Katha was a human being, flawed and beautiful and deserving of life like all of us. Her story reminds us that we must protect each other, especially those most vulnerable among us. We must speak up when we see danger. We must extend hands to those who are afraid. We must never allow wealth or power or status to shield those who harm the vulnerable. Katha's death demands this of us. Her memory requires it. May we honor her by building a world where no one else must die alone in the dark, begging for mercy that never comes. The sun set over Manila. Thousands of candles flickered in the cathedral plaza. Katha Santos' photograph, enlarged and printed on banners, hung from the cathedral walls. That same photo appeared on screens in Dubai, in Kuwait, in Singapore, in Hong Kong, everywhere Filipino workers had gathered to remember. She was 29 years old when she died. She'd been dead for 5 years. But her story lived on, not as entertainment, not as tragedy porn, but as a catalyst, a warning, a reminder. The security camera didn't save Katha's life. The recording on her phone didn't prevent her death. But together, those pieces of technology ensured her death wasn't in vain. They ensured her killer faced justice. They ensured her story reached millions. They ensured her name would never be forgotten. 15 seconds of security footage and 47 minutes of audio became a testament to one woman's refusal to disappear quietly. Sheikh Talal Al-Mahari locked Katha Santos in a safe, thinking he could seal away his problem, eliminate the threat to his reputation. Silence the woman who dared to demand he take responsibility for their child. But Katha Santos refused to be silenced. Even in death, her voice echoed. Even from darkness, her truth emerged. And that truth, captured by technology and amplified by justice, became a legacy more powerful than any fortune, more enduring than any empire, more meaningful than any title. Justice for Katha. Today, tomorrow, always.